You might recall a couple of weeks ago, the MP for Redditch and Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, Rachel Maclean, was in the news because she had reposted a tweet which referred to Green Party candidate Melissa Poulton as, quote, a man who wears a wig and calls himself a proud lesbian. This happened to be a statement of fact, but this didn't stop the West Mercia police recording this as a non-crime hate incident. Many of you might not be aware of what a non-crime hate incident actually is. You might be thinking to yourself, is it really the police's job to be investigating non-crime? That would be like your doctor phoning you up and saying, I hear you're really well at the moment. And of course you would have a point. So where has all this come from? Well, I can tell you that it hasn't come from the government. In 2014, the College of Policing, the quango responsible for training police forces in the UK, introduced non-crime hate incidents. They didn't have a mandate for it. They just did it. The idea would be that even if someone hadn't committed a crime, signs of hate needed to be monitored in case these sentiments developed into criminal activity in the future. You might follow the lead of science fiction writer Philip K. Dick, who called this kind of thing pre-crime. Sounds a bit dystopian, doesn't it? What business does the police have in auditing our private thoughts and emotions? Well, in a free society, none whatsoever. How it works is this. If someone is insulted or feels offended and perceives that the slight is motivated by hate, they can contact the police and the person in question will have a non-crime hate incident recorded by their name. They usually won't be told about this and there is no evidential threshold required. In other words, the accuser doesn't have to prove hateful intent, it's just assumed. Hate is defined as being offensive against one of the 5 protected characteristics. You can find them listed on the websites of the Crown Prosecution Service and the College of Policing. These are race, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity and disability. And you'll note that these are different to the list of protected characteristics in the Equality Act, which also includes sex, but features gender reassignment rather than transgender identity. The law enforcement agencies are using a revised list of their own making. And this explains why threats against women for standing up for single-sex spaces tend to be ignored by the police, but people have been arrested for misgendering, in other words, for exercising their free speech. But you might say, look, no one has been arrested for non-crime hate incidents, and yet there are other implications to consider. There are certain jobs, teaching, for instance, in which a DBS or disclosure and barring service check is required. And if you have a non-crime hate incident against your name, it will show up. And you probably won't get that job. And even if that weren't the case, what about the principles of a liberal democracy? I can't be the only one who thinks it's deeply sinister and authoritarian to have the police recording lists of citizens who have committed wrongthink. Sounds like the stuff of fiction, but it is very much real. In the 5 years after the College of Policing introduced the policy, around 120,000 non-crime hate incidents were recorded in England and Wales. Estimates now suggest that that'll be knocking on for 250,000 by this point. And Rachel Maclean isn't even the first MP to have experienced this. In 2017, the then Home Secretary Amber Rudd had a non-crime hate incident recorded against her because she referred to migrant workers in a speech at the Tory party conference, and someone took offence and contacted the police. But mostly it's just regular people getting clobbered by this sinister practice. A man in Bedfordshire was slapped with a non-crime hate incident for whistling the theme tune from Bob the Builder at his neighbour, which for some reason was interpreted as racist. Other actions that have been recorded as hate incidents by police include a disputed line call in a tennis match, a dog defecating on someone's lawn, and a man saying that he was campaigning for Brexit. And the barrister, Sarah Phillimore, who has appeared on my show many times, was recorded as having committed a non-crime hate incident when she posted a satirical tweet which featured a picture of her puppy, along with the caption, "My dog will call me a Nazi for cheese." The point is that the police have no right to be doing this. According to the Law Society Gazette, it's not even lawful. And this has been tested in court. In 2019, former Constable Harry Miller was contacted by Humberside Police following a complaint by an offended party about a poem that he had shared on social media, which was deemed to be transphobic. Harry, being an ex-cop, knew something was amiss. He asked why the unnamed complainant was being described as a victim if no crime had actually been committed. And more to the point, he said, why was he being investigated at all? To which came the ominous response, "We need to check your thinking." Thought crime. That's a concept that readers of George Orwell will be familiar with. However, Harry Miller took the police to the High Court with the help of the Free Speech Union, and in December 2021, the Court of Appeal ruled that, quote, the recording of non-crime hate incidents is plainly an interference with freedom of expression. But by that point, the Home Secretary of the time, Priti Patel, had already instructed the police to stop recording non-crime hate incidents over hurt feelings. That was in April 2021. And then in March of this year, Home Secretary Suella Braverman published new guidelines reminding police that this is the case. But the College of Policing have merely fudged the language of their guidance and just carried on as before. So what does that tell us? Well, it would seem that the College of Policing has been ideologically captured. It is now an activist body. And this would explain why so many police officers seem to think it's their job to monitor the speech of UK citizens. The College of Policing has been told to stop it by successive Home Secretaries. They've been told it is unethical and unlawful by the High Courts, and still they persist. And at some point, it's got to stop. Surely it's beyond the point now when the College of Policing ought to be abolished and replaced with a service that observes the law rather than the demands of activists. I would have thought that by now non-crime hate incidents would be a thing of the past, but the activists within the College of Policing are used to getting their own way, and they're not going to give this up without a fight. Right, before I go to my panel, I want to give a bit of a right of reply to the College of Policing. So this is a statement they put out in June of this year. This was the Chief Constable Andy Marsh said, a new code and guidance are now in place for officers when responding to non-crime hate incidents. These incidents should not be recorded where they are trivial, irrational, or there is no basis to conclude that an incident was motivated by hostility. And yet, panel, they did in fact record a non-crime hate incident against Rachel McLean when there was no evidence of hostility. And you can see from their wording there, they're still going to do it. They're just going to modify the language. Emma, am I the only one who's disturbed by this?
No, and I didn't realise this had been introduced by the College of Policing without any mandate. I think it's deeply, as you say, deeply sinister, very alarming. This is truly the stuff of Orwellian kind of nightmares, if not, kind of dystopia. The fact that people are, that the accusers are unnamed and that you don't even know this stuff has been recorded against you. The fact that you're citing people whistling Bob the Builder, things like that is absolutely ludicrous.
And, we could have non-crime hate incidents against us right now. You have to check in with the police. I haven't. I assume I have got a few against my name.
Exactly, you don't actually know.
Yeah.
We have to be clear about this. Either something, I don't agree with all this hate crime stuff anyway, but either it's a crime or it's not. This weird category of a non-crime hate incident, I think that's where it's weird and very, very alarming. And as you say, why are the police wasting time when we know the police are so overstretched, underfunded, all this stuff that they claim?
Yes.
Why are they investigating this? Why are they following this up?
Okay.
When there's real crime to be
If I can have Matthew or Bennett, does anyone have an opposing view? Does anyone here think that actually the police are well within their rights to investigate people for non-crime?
No.
Okay.
Sorry about that, but we're getting some consensus.
Okay, there's a bit of consensus.
I come from the left of politics, but I think it is very worrying because, first of all, it seems to me it's a total cop-out for the cops. Rather than investigating real hate crime, rather than actually getting things right, as we've seen with so many cases where they haven't delivered for people within the 5 protected characteristics, whichever way you take, whichever 5 characteristics you take, and instead this is just ludicrous. It's judge and jury for a copper at the end of a phone who's enforcing something that hasn't been decided by Parliament. Parliament needs to be sovereign, not the College of Policing, which is a quango. And it's a training college.
It's also so vague. We have a situation where police forces are actually doing different things.
Yeah.
Some are doing it, some are not doing it, some are applying the rules in different ways. So, because there are no clear rules about this. Benedict, I come back to this point. Why won't the government just step in and say, this quango is no longer fit for purpose?
Your guess is as good as mine. This has been the theme of various iterations of the Conservatives since they came in to power, is that they say, this isn't very good, and then they don't do anything about it. They assume that it will just stop if you say that it's bad, which is completely the opposite to the Labour Party, which comes in and says, this is our ideology, and you're sure that we're going to make sure that it is forced through. And I think that this really shows you the failure, the betrayal, frankly, of the Conservative Party towards its own voters, that they have allowed these things to fester for over a decade now. And the best that they can do is go, oh, it's a bit woke, it's not good, somebody should do something about it. As they're staring down the barrel of a general election. People are all sat here going, well, you did have the power, you were the government. Thanks so much.
Emma, can I come to you next? Because that's a really interesting point, because it's not just that particular quango. The civil service also has exactly the same problem. We've had a whistleblower recently talking about how whatever immigration policies the government wants to do, the civil service staff members will thwart it.
That the Home Office were never serious about immigration. They weren't behind any of the plans, and it's all a joke. But more seriously, what does this do to our heads? And it's not even about being Conservative voters. It's about the population in general. The Rachel McLean, the man in a wig comments, I think it was really, I know it was a couple of weeks ago, I think it's really, really worrying when people can see the evidence of their eyes and they're being told the opposite. It is Orwellian, because you're being told the opposite of what we can all see, which was what 99% of people were saying, that is a man in a wig. Now look, I support the right of every single person to love who they want, to dress how they want, to live exactly as they wish, and I think we should do that with love and acceptance. But when you are being told that a man who dresses in a wig, which is absolutely fine, is a woman, and we can all see that they are not a woman, what does that do to people? I think what it does, it starts just to undermine the whole fabric of trust in authorities, of society, of laws, of all of this. It just makes one think, well, it's just ridiculous.
Well, that's an interesting point. I want to connect it to something Matthew
said. We're being told to say the opposite of what we can see.
Right, well, because Matthew, you raised the spectre of hate crime as a concept. Now, the problem that we have here is, as Emma's sort of saying here, is that actually hate, I mean, the idea of saying that is a man in a wig is being redefined as hate. The idea of women saying we want single-sex spaces is being redefined as hate. So is even the categorisation of hate crime fit for purpose, if no one can agree what hate actually means?
Well, it's interesting that in these cases, an actual case for hate crime, which would actually go before a court rather than before a copper, sitting at the end of the phone line, would be tested. So, we have hate crime laws, and yet none of these cases are taken under that, because this isn't a law. As you said so clearly, this isn't a law. This is a mode of operation for the police. And what I think is extraordinary is it's a complete waste of money, because as can be seen here, every single police force either has a directly elected mayor or a police and crime commissioner in England and Wales, and yet they don't seem to be stopping them. The Tories did well at the last police and crime commissioner elections. Loads of them are Tories. None of them seem to be stopping this.
Finally, Benedict, I just want to ask you about this, because I mentioned the Equality Act, which has been sort of rewritten by the College of Policing to redefine, so that the word sex is out of their list of protected characteristics, even though it is there in the Equality Act. And this is why feminists and women who are basically standing up for their rights, they never get any help from the police when they complain. They're just sort of demonised and smeared as transphobic or hateful or anything like that. So what can we do about an activist presence within such an important body, because it means that the police surely are not serving impartially?
You need to marginalise people, you need to sack them, you need to reform them, and the problem is that doing this sort of root and branch reform takes time, and that is, I'm afraid, I go back to the length of time the Conservatives have been in power. If you're going to take this sort of thing seriously, you need to take it in terms of this could take a decade to do, and it will need to be done on day one. And actually what we have not had is any sort of long-term coherent policy from this government on almost anything, certainly not on this. And it is a bit of a cliche, but they almost seem to enjoy, they almost seem to relish the fact that every now and then, I say every now and then, it's almost every day now, that some sort of story crops up somewhere about something woke happening. It's always that, the woke mob's gone mad, be it at university, be it in the College of Policing, be it at, hospitals putting people in different wards because they identify as a badge or whatever it is. They like that, because then they can go, we have to rally against this. But are they going to do anything about it?
It's all happened under the Tories' watch. This idea that this is a left-right issue is actually completely false.
Absolutely.
So it's very interesting. Never mind, I'm sure Labour will sort this out. Anyway.
I'll see what I can do.